I'm about to spoil Red Dirt Witch for you. This week in Writing with Robbie, we edit the short story through the stylings of How Long to Black Future Month. I'm going to word that better later. So I'll be reading these again, and I will be sharing some of my thoughts with you, especially on my favorite two, which would be Red Dirt Witch and La Alchemista. Ooh. I don't know about you, but I'm finna turn up. So I forgot where I learned this technique, but it is basically to study, memorize, or copy any writings that you would like to influence your own writing. And I basically chose, so far I know the first 3 stories I'm going to do. And the first one I chose was City Born Great, which is the second of the short stories in this book. And that one I picked basically because I remember that the first time I read it, I wasn't able to really understand what was going on, and it went kind of from just a generic story about the city in my mind to all of a sudden being fantastical. And I was like, I think I've missed something. And then when I read it the second time, around maybe months after that, I kind of had the same feeling. And so this time I was like, okay, I'm really going to pay attention. I'm really going to focus on the language here. And it kind of gave me this time, like, I think what was happening is they were talking about fantastical elements, but because everything else was so normal city life, I kind of just took it as like maybe they're doing a play on words, and I didn't take it as literal. And even I think that N.K. Jemisin kind of wrote it that way just because I've heard her speak before on how with the 5th season, kind of one of the major plot twists in the 5th season. Sorry, there's a baby in the house. He's really excited, really happy, and really vocal. So if you'll bear with me. I was going to say, so N.K. Jemisin talks about with the 5th season how her major plot twist or major there's sort of a major bit of information that is, I don't want to spoil it. I'm not going to spoil it at all. But if you've read the 5th season, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't read it, you don't know. But in the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin, there's basically a moment where we realize a major twist in the story that if you were paying attention, you notice. And if you're not paying that much attention, it will surprise you. And some people kind of critiqued her work negatively, saying that it wasn't very well hidden. And then her answer in response to that, she was saying that she wasn't attempting to hide that at all. She was actually kind of rewarding those who were paying attention by saying you'll figure it out early if you're paying attention. If you're not paying attention, you won't notice until it's stated in the story. And so with how this one is written, how this one short story, The City Born Great, A City Born Great was written to me in a way where it was like, maybe it was again her way of saying if you're paying attention, you'll really catch that this is a high fantasy story, versus before the first 2 times I read it where I was just like, I'm seeing that this is fantastical in a little bit and then it just goes boom. Excuse me. So this time I read it and I definitely feel like I received it a lot better. And I noted when things were happening that were fantastical. But it probably also helped that when I started it, I was like, I think that I may have heard that this is a prequel or a follow-up or a proof of concept for her novel, The City We Became. And I have not read that yet, so please, if you have, no spoilers. But this one particular story, I think, is about that world, or proof of concept for that world. So keeping that in mind and knowing vaguely what that's about, it helped me follow along a lot better. And it's not the only one in this collection that is a proof of concept, or like, I know for a fact that Stone Hunger, which is one of the later short stories in this collection, that is a proof of concept for the 5th season. So basically she was working out the ideas, seeing if her magic system would make sense. And in writing that proof of concept, she got to work out a character that she decided to completely change. How her, well, I'll say the type of magic they have in that world. We follow a character who has that type of magic in Stone Hunger, and she perceives her magic in one way, and then when the 5th season actually is written, it comes out where this character perceives her magic in a totally different way. But I think that the only difference, the only thing that makes Stone Hunger not able to be in the same world technically as the 5th season is probably because we have one familiar character in that short story that is also in the series of novels, and that person's lifestyle is different. But otherwise, I think that you could argue that it could still fit in that same world, even with the differences in how the two main characters perceive their magic. Just because I think in the story, in the series, and it probably was something that influenced from her proof of concept, which is that they're taught to perceive their magic a certain way in the actual trilogy, versus in the short story, this person seems kind of like a loner, and they perceive their magic in their own different way. And I won't get into specifics, but if you've read one and you read the other, you'll see the difference in how they perceive their power, the way that they use their power. Okay. So I really enjoy the language and the brevity of these stories, because she's able to give you a lot of exposition without info dumping, and give you, setting and deeply immerse you in a very short story. As a matter of fact, I think the one that I just read was probably exactly, hold on, 1733. It was 16 pages. So I think for that one, even though it wasn't my favorite before, and I just talked to, as a matter of fact, somebody else who read that story that I got to speak with, they also didn't seem to super enjoy that story. And I think I had to confess to her at the time, I was like, I don't think I actually was paying attention in the way that I needed to absorb that story for what it was. And after reading it today, I will have to say I agree with that statement. But also, I think what kind of deters me from liking it so much, not that it's bad, because it's not. It's actually really good. It's really smart and very well done. But I think when I wasn't paying that much attention and I wasn't getting in there deeply enough to do it justice, I think what I was picking up on that I didn't like is the elements of style that she chose. She wrote this story, A City Born Great, is written in first person, which I don't hate, but specifically for fantasy, I prefer third person, like, much more. And it's just chalked up to differences, and N.K. Jemisin uses both first person, she uses third person, and I've even seen her use second person in the 5th season series, Broken Earth trilogy. So, I mean, I know that whatever choices that she made, she thought it through. And I've read her, and I've watched her master class, so I know these are things that she considers before she writes. Or even while she's editing. So I think it was just one of those things where, because I wasn't paying so much attention, and there were small elements that she used, not even small, but style choices for that story that I didn't care for, it almost made me not like it because I was paying attention. But now that I was paying more attention, I see her using it in first person, which I don't favor, but I also see that she's doing it in a very sensible way. It makes sense, it's very well done. So it's like she's taking something I don't like and doing a good job of it. So when I'm not paying attention, all I see is the negative. When I'm really paying attention, I see the details of the work that she put into it. And again, this is like my very favorite author right now. So This is, you know, me having high respect, high value for this author, and still, you know, I specifically chose a story that I know I did not enjoy previously. Not that I thought it was bad ever. I just was like, I couldn't really get into that one as much as I would have liked to, because I think I read the 5th season trilogy before I read How Long to Black Future Month, if I'm not mistaken. But what I made a note, something that helped me specifically and directly that I would like to share with all of you, is that I remember, I know I've spoken about it before, how I have a concern of whether or not my story is going to come off as offensive in some areas. And they're very small areas, but it is something that I've given a lot of thought to. And there was one part in particular, one word in particular, that I was like, I really don't want to take this word out or change it. And even the person who edited my story professionally was not at all offended by the word, even though, you know, she fits in the intersection of people that I thought might be offended by it. It's not a bad word. It's just a word. But in that place, it kind of like, it could come off a certain way. And I still want to use that word, but I don't want it to seem as if it was the narrator's thought, but I wanted to make sure it comes off as the character's thought without having to use thinking tags for that character in that moment. And even though N.K. Jemisin wrote it in first person, she made me feel a little bit better, because in this story, her main character, it is first person, and they refer to cops or police as monsters, and they use the mental image of mirrors floating around their head to reflect when the monsters are near. It helps this character feel a lot more at ease around police. And because they're, you know, they're black, they're homeless, etc., etc. So I just thought it, since our narrator is the person who said it, it doesn't hold up to say, well, maybe this is N.K. Jemisin's thoughts. May or may not be so, but it's not necessarily so just because their character feels that way. And I also had someone read, not a professional, not a paid professional is what I should say, but someone read the early bits of my story, and I think this is the part that they were referring to, but I specifically was like, you know, I hope we're okay, because I didn't want this to offend you as well, but it is true to that character. And they were telling me, you know, if it's true to the character, you know, that, I mean, it might be true to the character, it doesn't necessarily reflect on the author. But I also have not heard from this person in a very long time. So with that being said, it obviously is something that stood out in my head. Like, they told me it was okay, but I haven't heard from them, so maybe it really did insult them. And even though I have been told since then to not worry about offending people with my art, I still want to make sure, if it is offensive, that I stand by it in the way that I've written it, at very least. I don't want to offend, but if it is, I still want to write it to an extent where I'll take full responsibility and be like, I did say that. You're absolutely right. And I was clear as I meant to be in that moment. And I do feel like it was pretty clear thus far, but I'd like it to be a little more clear that that's not the narrator's thoughts, but that is, as the writer, you know, and I guess the narrator, it would be, I felt it necessary to address, how do I say this without spoiling? I felt it necessary to address, what was going on in the realest way possible for this character, even if that meant being offensive, because to offend one group, I'm speaking another group's truth. You know what I mean? So that's I'm not trying to make excuses for being offensive. If it offends, you know, I just want to be able to stand by and accept that critique and say, you know what? That's what I said, that's what I meant, but I do understand if that offends you. Like, you know what I mean? It wasn't meant to be offensive. It was meant to be, to put that truth out there in a most simple way. And I really would like to tell you specifically, but I'm not talking about my story to that extent yet. So when it comes out, maybe we'll talk more about that. Definitely comment if you want to hear that in, like, with the specifics of what I was writing about. Excuse me. if you want the specifics of the comment that I'm talking about, you know, leave a comment for me so that I see that and I'm like, oh, okay, the people actually do want the specifics of that. But I'm not going to say until the book is out. So, okay, so I moved the camera a bit. I hope that didn't totally throw off everything. All right, let's see. I really did like this short story though. It was one that it was just going over my head the first couple of times. And today, I think it's just because my head's been in like a weird space for the last few years, honestly. But I think we're finally getting a little more balanced. And reading this was really a test for me. I was like, if I don't like it this time, because I didn't blame N.K. Jemisin. I think N.K. Jemisin is a genius with her writing, and I was like, if I don't get this story, it has to be me. So now I get it. I definitely think if I were from New York, I would have enjoyed it a lot better, but I think, you know, it's still written in a way where if you're from New York, it's like shout out, but if you're not from New York, it's like I understand what's happening, and the things that I don't get, I realize are things that are true to New York life and culture. And what's normal for people who are from that actual city versus being like, what is this word even? I don't know what this is. Like, I know, but like some stuff, okay. Let me see. I don't know. I just thought this was so good. The language was so real. And I think because it was in first person, a lot of the things that I was concerned about with the language in my story, it's like, this I was like, this story doesn't even seem to have these concerns. Why is that? And I'm like, oh, because it's in first person, so it's being written in a real voice instead of in the way I call mine. I'm like, I feel like the narration of my story is very pretentious. I don't talk like that. Nobody talks like that, but it's the narrator, so I feel like you can allow for that because the language of the narrator needs to suit the mood of the story. And I still give my characters very real voices, kind of like how I think this story did, but then I switched to the narrator to do the in-between the quotes. So it's like we have, you know, real, raw language, and then we have this pretentious, poetic narrator to go up against it, but it kind of flows in a sense that they're all speaking in a similar mood, even though it's a different language. Versus this story, it's just very New York, and it's like, it's real, it's raw, it's street, it's authentic, and even the narration, it's like done in a way where it's like a New Yorker talking to a New Yorker. And at some, like, there's this one paragraph, I keep staring at the book because this one paragraph is so amazing, because I realized looking at it that the punctuation just stops for a while, and I really like how it works. I want to try to remember, this is page 27 if you have a copy. I'm going to try to put it on the screen just in case you don't. But over the barrier and through the grass into fucking hell I go. 1 lane silver car, 2 lanes, horns, horns, horns. 3 lanes semi. What a fucking semi. Sorry. Horns, horns, horns. 3 lanes semi. What's a fucking semi doing on the FDR? It's too tall, you stupid upstate hick. Screaming 4 lanes, green taxi, screaming smart car, ha ha ha, cute, 5 lanes, moving truck, 6 lanes, and the blue Lexus actually brushes up against my clothes as it blares past. Screaming, 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 screaming metal and tires. Reality stretches and nothing stops for a mega cop. I'm gonna stop right there because I feel like I'm getting into like the climactic part of the story, but just that kind of like, those who understand the rules understand how to break the rules, and it still makes sense. But also it gives you, like, if you understand poetry, then you can use poetic
the secret word is devices.
Hold on. I can't think of the word I was trying to say, but if you read poetry, like poetry, understand poetry. You can take techniques, is what I'll say, that are used in poetry and put them in your stories, and it can give a different feel. It could give a different mood. It could change everything. Especially like this one, to take out the punctuation, it makes everything kind of run on. Like it's one long sentence, one stream of thought. But also another instance that she does from the start of the chapter, and almost like anytime she changes scenes, she has the character kind of do a sort of repetition, which would be another, let's call it technique. So she uses, the technique of no punctuation. And then she also uses the technique of repetition. So it's, I sing the city, fucking city. And that's the first two sentences. And then you go on a little further. So this is my repetition. And you go on a little further. The next section after the first break, I paint the city. And then we go even further. And the repetition stops for the very next break, you know what I mean? So it just says, I'm so tired on the day I meet Paolo, but we still start with the word I. So it doesn't keep happening. But there's another break and it doesn't happen again. So there's twice where it doesn't. But then there's another break and it says, I run the city. I run it every fucking day. And it's the third and final time that we get that kind of, I think so anyway, that we get that kind of start. And I also think that that's the last break in the entire story. Hold on. Yep. Nope. There's one more break at the very end. I sing to the city. I paint the city. I run the city. So just repetition and how much power that can give. And it only took her using it 3 times. And my guess is because it's such a short story, with it having, I think that was 6 total breaks. That would mean she would be using that 6 times in only 16 pages. And I think 3 is kind of like a magic number, rule of thumb number, if you really don't know. But actually, here's another one. There's no section break here, but this is one of the last few sentences of this chapter. It says, I reach for my city. And I mean, she used it a 4th time, and at that point, I didn't expect it. Excuse me, I didn't expect it, and I didn't notice it because it didn't start the new section. But that was an example of how she used repetition, and she used the lack of punctuation in one paragraph in very appropriate sections, because you don't want your story to be repetitive unless it's clear that you're using it as a tool, as a I almost remember the word again, but you're using that repetition as a tool to make a point, and then it becomes more powerful in how she used it. But also taking that punctuation out, that's another rule. Why would you take punctuation out of a paragraph? How do we know it's a paragraph if it's not 3 or 4 sentences and rules? But once you understand those rules, you understand how and why, and where to break it. And she didn't have to break it up. It still would have been a great paragraph, but it shows the her expertise as a writer to do something like that. And I try to use, it wasn't this book that taught me that or anything, but it was really nice to see it in here. And that's something that I've tried to do as well, is use those poetic, is to use those poetic techniques, is what I'll continue to say. Devices. That's the word. That's literally the word. Those poetic devices is what I was going to say. I was in different poetic devices in my story as well, where appropriate. And I did use the repetition one. Actually, maybe I did not. I don't know if I used it in my short story. I don't know if my novella has repetition in it, but I know that's a technique that I'm already planning for the next book, in like this perfect chapter where I want to use it. Where how movies typically have a symbol that they use that may or may not be even spoken about in the movie, but you might see it at this point and that point and this point in the movie, and it means something different every time. There is I know Story by Robert McKee. I've never seen the movie, Les Diaboliques, I think is what it's called. If not, I'll put the name on the screen. I'll probably do it anyway because it's French. But he mentions that movie in length in the book, Story by Robert McKee. So he mentions the movie Les Diaboliques is what I believe it's called, and their symbol being water. And I don't remember how they use it the first 2 times, but the last and final time that he mentions water being used in that movie, the last time we know that it's used, it's dripping water. And by the time we hear that sound in this movie, we're terrified of the sound of dripping water because of the first instances of them using that. And there's also a sense of building on things like that. So maybe the faucet drips in the first part of the movie and it's not scary, but it's annoying. And then the second time water drips, it's scary. And then so the third time we hear it, but we don't see anything. And now we're like, oh crap, here we go, dripping water again. And now we're afraid of the sound before we even see what comes around the corner. So that would be a way to do that. Do repetition with an imagery or audio in a movie, but you can also do that same thing in a book. And I think that was a really good example of how to do that in a positive and inspiring way, because we take a character who wondered at one time if they would even make it to the age of 50, and then, you know, eventually we get 50 years later. Was that 50 years later? Is that what I said? Is that what it said? Literally a bonnet. Okay. Excuse my bacon stripping. I'll have to blend that later. I don't have any foundations. But I did remember that I got this eyeshadow for my birthday from the infamous Lady Luck herself. If y'all Twitch stream, I don't know. She's pretty famous. I think she has a YouTube channel. I know she's famous on Instagram, but she's super famous on Twitch. But she got me this for my birthday. I don't know anything about makeup, but I started getting like these cheap $2 eyeshadow palettes that I was like, I may never use them. And I had one for years. I thought I threw it away because it was old, but I just found it along with this one I got for my birthday. And I forgot I had them. I was looking for hair bands that I ended up not using for my braids. And I had this old palette that I bought, or not old, I had a newer palette that I also bought for like $2.50. But she got me like a real palette for my birthday. And I'm gonna have to edit that because I almost showed y'all my cover art, which I think I'm gonna do for the next video. I hope we're doing that for the next video. But she got me this Milani Gilded Terra. I don't know what that means. I bet it's a video game thing. I don't know. But, you know, sometimes there's themed eyeshadow sets. I'm like, maybe this is a video game themed one. I have no idea. Don't know what Gilded Terra is. I don't know if it's a video gamer or a makeup artist somewhere who is rolling their eyes at me saying this. But anyway, So I had my cheap one, and then I went to go look for some hair bows today that I ended up not needing or using, but I forgot that she got me this palette for my birthday, not knowing that I was wanting to use makeup at all. So I was like, damn, is that a hint? Get some makeup, bitch. I'm just joking, but anyway. But she got me this cool palette. As you can see, I tested out a couple of them today, but I put the plastic back on. But we've got some really cool colors that make me think maybe it's not video game thing. I'm for sure wanting to try all the colors, but I ended up just trying what matched my shirt the best, which isn't my favorite color scheme, and it's messy. But I was like, yeah, it's fine. And it is. I was thinking about adding some of the green, but I really don't know what I'm doing, and I didn't want to test it out right before I recorded too much. So I was like, I'll do something a little simpler, still looks crazy, and then later I'll play with it and test out some other color schemes. But right now, just clock me for my lace front. Oh my god, I'm showing you the thing. I might as well just go ahead and show you since it'll be up next week. But oh my god. Queen, yes, hi. This is exactly what I looked like in high school. Just shy, low self-esteem. I didn't have eyeshadow or gauges, but oh my god, it's her. I can't believe it. Yes. Crazy cuckoo, but you can call me auntie. Anyway, so yeah, I got cut off last night while I was trying to talk about literary and poetic devices. So I do intend to use, I think, a few simple ones in my short story. I'm not sure. My novella, I wanted the title to have alliteration in it, and I guess I can confess the title I was gonna use. Today we're going into the next story, and I've decided that I'm only gonna do 3. Yeah. So the next story is Red Dirt Witch. So I decided that I think I'm only going to do 3 stories for this video because there were only 3 that I was really like, I want to check this story, and this story, and then I want to edit my story. And then I think I just kind of went up to 5 because we're doing a YouTube video. And I'm like, no, the video is not the point. The video is just to kind of keep me on track temporally. But the actual task is to edit my story. So I'm going to stick to the 3 that I initially wanted to read. And the main one that I actually wanted to look at is the next one that we have. So the first one, City Born Great, I wanted to read because I knew that I was not really grasping the full spectrum of what that story was doing, and I wanted to give that another chance because I was like, I know this is good. I know that I wasn't in the right mindset the first 2 times that I read it, so let's give it a 3rd try. And 3rd time was absolutely the charm for City Born Great. I understood it much better. Obviously I slept on it, so now here it is the next day, and I'm enjoying what I read in that story even more. So the next 2 stories, and as a matter of fact, they're they're in order. The next 2 stories I want to do have always been my favorites from this book, and definitely have had the most impact on me after I finished the book. I've also read them both again before starting this story over 2 years ago at this point. So now, almost 2 years later, I'm going to be reading them again. So I'm going to read my next 2, which were my very favorites from... So I'm going to go read the next 2, which were my very favorites from this collection, and that would be Red Dirt Witch and La Alchemista. Yeah. So the way they open Red Dirt Witch, the way we get an idea of where we are, it's done like, and even how the magic, I don't know, there's just, oh, it's so good. It's so good. I don't even know where to start, except first of all, the title, Red Dirt Witch. I love it because it's giving me the idea of like Southern witchcraft, which, we have branches like you have white witch, you have, green witch, you have all these other type of, you have kitchen witch, hedge witch, and she gave us red dirt witch, which makes you think about and that puts you in mind of the deep south and red dirt, red clay ground, and I don't know, I just thought it was really cool. I know that N.K. Jemisin is like currently a New York resident. I don't know where she's from. It might actually say on this back cover. Hold on. Let's see. No, but it does say in her spare time she's a gamer and a gardener. She's so cute. They're just so cute. I mean, just so cute. She's talking about her 2 cats. Oh, man. Okay. N.K. Jemisin is an adorable human being. I love her, like, talented genius. Good Lord. Probably a good heart, too. The way so this is how Red Dirt Witch opens. I'm going to give you the first maybe maybe first 2 paragraphs or a couple of sentences from the first 2 paragraphs. So, the way to tell the difference between dreams that were prophecy and dreams that were just wasted sleep was to see if they came 3 times. Emmeline had her 3rd dream about the white lady on the coldest night ever recorded in Alabama history. This was actually very cold, 10 degrees below zero, on a long, dark January Sabbath when even the moon hid behind the veil of shadow. Talk about poetry. So many things. So we know we're in Alabama. We know that it's a Saturday in January. Or the Sabbath in January. So it's just giving you, like, even to use that language, it makes you think, we're either talking to a Christian character or a Wiccan character because, we're talking about the Sabbath. Emmeline survived the cold the way the poor people everywhere have done since the dawn of time, with a warm, energetic friend. 3 patchwork quilts helped too. The friend was Frank Heath, who was pretty damn spry for a man of 55, though he claimed to be 45, so maybe that helped. The quilts were M's, and it also helped that one of them had dried flowers, Jack in the pulpits, and a few nuggets of charcoal tucked under each patch of leftover cloth. That made for a standing invitation to warmth in the summertime. Who were, of course, welcome to pay visit and stay the night anytime they liked. Those had come a call-in to the children's bed, at least, for which Emmeline was grateful. The children slept soundly, snug and comfortable. That left Em and Frank free to conduct their own warmth-making with easy conscience. Are you still watching me? I'm trying to read. This is such a good story. So first I was like, the reason I wanted to read this is because, okay, first of all, the content is great, but content be darned. I just think the way that she wrote Red Dirt Witch alone, like, I don't even care what the story's about. The way she wrote it set us up, helps us, like, get to know the magic system only 2 pages in, like, you know what I mean? Like, before we hit the bottom of the 2nd page of this, we know the power of the prophecy in her dreams. We know a hint not even a hint. I was going to say a hint at the power that she has. It does kind of, you know, when she sees that the store has raised the prices again. Her dreams ask her, you know, since they're being greedy, it would be fine for you to punish them, wouldn't it? And she tells this voice, well, basically she tells the voice, I don't blame the manager for the prices, I blame the company. And she says, well, I can't, and I don't have enough power to go after the entire company. So that keeps her from, in that moment, from using her powers for ill will. But she also says, so that lets us know that she has power to influence this one manager, but she doesn't blame them, and she doesn't have enough to go after the whole company. But the voice is still like, well, sin's a sin. And she's like, well, and she says, and let she who is without sin cast the first stone, as you well know. So basically saying that she's the last person in her, or she's not sinless, so she shouldn't go punishing the manager for what he did. And the voice is just trying to warn her that some woman is coming. I'm not going to get into the details. It's such a good story. I'm only at the bottom of page 2. But what does she say? There's something, just because it was relevant, but also because it's a touch of how magic works in general. She, you know, telling the voice, you know, ill wishing opens the door for ill winds to blow through. I don't know who needed to hear that. Maybe somebody did. It definitely hit me some type of way when I read that, because I'm not going to get into specifics, but I had a person, and I handled it, you know, well. I mostly just kind of ignored it until it went away, and it did go away. But this person is also powerful enough and well-read enough to know these things, that they shouldn't be wishing ill will on anybody, because it can cause that, you know, that opens the door for it to return home to sender. So just that, and how she's mixing earth magic in this story, which, you know, I don't know, I just think it's really cool, because N.K. Jemisin is kind of addressing the magic of our real world in this story, and it's not much of a stretch. So I think this would be considered a low fantasy. I would love to see this world expanded, by the way. I wonder if she will. She already has given us like 3 short stories in here have already, like, they're a part of 3 other worlds that she's written. Like City We Became, has, in this short story, A City Born Great is a part of City We Became world. And then we have Stone Hunger, which is a part of Broken Earth world. And then we have the first one in this short story collection is The Ones Who Stay and Fight. And don't quote me, but I believe that is from the Inheritance trilogy universe. And there's also a novella, a part of that is that was added in addition, or at the end of Inheritance trilogy, I think. Basically, in the way N.K. Jemisin explains it is that the worlds are really never complete, but she gets them as complete as she can before she puts it out. And then sometimes the characters, I know in the case of Inheritance trilogy, she explained it as a character decided that they had more of a story to tell, and they weren't going to let her rest until she put it out. So I don't know if Red Dirt Witch gave her the same vibes. I really definitely hope that we get more from that universe that she's creating here. But this is very close to like the magic of the universe that we live in, the magic of the world, or rather I should say the magic of the earth that we live in. But also it mixes in a lot of elements of the Bible and Christianity. And again, we're only in the bottom of the second page. So, I mean, literally, like, I'm still here. You can still see the title, you know? I mean, she's a genius. And that's why I get stuck on this one, because I'm probably going to start over right now. And I don't think it's that long. I'm trying to see. So it starts on page 34. This one is so good. It's just so good. Okay, so no, it's a little longer than I thought. It's not that long, but I'm just trying to see. Yeah, I was like, I think it's shorter than the last one. So this one goes from page 34 to page 57. Okay, so 23 pages. So it's only, is that math right? 57, 35? Yeah, okay. So it's what? How many pages did I say? I think I said 23. I hope I said 23. And then and then La Alchemista starts on page 58. Also another one that I was just like, how did she give us so much in such a short amount of time? This genius. So 58 to 74. So that one's only 14 pages. Right? Yeah. And I'm just tripping because within that 14 pages, we get a beginning, a middle, and a twist. And not only do we get that, we also get a story, like a real slice of a magic system, but also setting and scenery that we are really enveloped by, that we don't necessarily want to leave. And Red Dirt Witch, I'm about to read it, but I don't believe that we leave, like, I think there's only like 3 scene changes as far as the location of the character that is speaking. And one of those is in her dream. And then I think for the most part we stay at her house. I think there's a chance that we also go to market with her, but I know one of those times we go to market is in her dream, so I don't know if you want to count that or not. But with La Alchemista, we literally only have one location. I'd tell you where, but I'd rather you read it. I don't want to tell you anything about La Alchemista, but it's so good. Like Red Dirt Witch probably is the one that impacted me the most in the moment, but La Alchemista, having so much occur in such a short story, and it doesn't help. I'm drooling. I might as well tell you where it is. It's in a restaurant. We only are in a restaurant. It's a closed restaurant. It's minimal characters, and we get a lot of this world. I have to read that one again. I'm about to, so I'll talk about it more. But La Alchemista is literally, they're cooking. And it's just, I feel like the pages might smell good, taste good, the way that she's describing it. I'm not going to get into it. I think I'm just hungry right now. I might go eat breakfast before I read La Alchemista. But I'm going to stop here because I wanted to read Red Dirt Witch before I start the things that I actually have to do today. And I still need to have breakfast, so. Now I'm just in debate on how much of this next segment I want to share. I'm going to read you this paragraph, I think. So they have a character now who comes in, and it says, she who is I'm going to paraphrase, but she who's a widow like Emmeline had done what she had to keep herself and her children alive through the cold and not so cold days. This character was afraid she might be pregnant again. I know it's a sin, she said in her quiet, dignified voice while Emmeline fixed her some tea. For this one, she'd sent her daughter off to the market with her brothers. Skip. Still, if you could help me out, I'd be grateful. Sins making a world where women got to choose between 2 children eaten and 3 children starving. Damn. That's true. So, seeing as it's relevant to the current climate of the day, there's been a Supreme Court ruling overturned in some states. That would be Roe v. Wade, if you're interested in that. So that's kind of what this paragraph is touching on, and this is before that occurred. But so a character is saying, I know it's a sin to, but I think I might be pregnant and I could use your help, is basically what she's saying. And then in response, the Red Dirt Witch in the story tells her, sins making a world where a woman has to choose between 2 children eating and 3 children starving. Yeah. And then she continues, and you sure as hell didn't do that. So I'm going to stop there. But yeah, so if anybody needed to
understand, become a little more empathetic to people in that situation. I've never had to do that. I'm very grateful. But I don't judge anybody who has had to do that, because they've suffered enough. If you ask me, like, it's not an easy process to go through. It's not an easy decision to make. So if somebody made that decision, I'm going to be the last person to say, well, you shouldn't have done that because X, Y, Z. Because I promise you, they've already considered that. Doesn't mean that they made the right decision, but maybe that was the right decision for themselves. Maybe it was the right decision for the child, to not bring them in this world starving. I don't know. And in the case of this story, it's set in a different time. So, yeah, I don't really want to say too much. But, yeah, instead of judging those people, put yourself in their shoes. Maybe you'll come out on the other side empathetic. Instead of judging them for what they're choosing to do, ask, how can I help? Is there a way that we can prevent that? What do you need to feel that that's something that you don't need to do? I promise you, even people who are pro-choice, nobody is like, yay, abortion. I just want to put that out there. Nobody is excited about abortion. Can we just agree on that? So yeah. I'm going to get back to this book, but it is the tea. Like, she is very quickly and non-judgmentally addressing real relevant issues and concerns in this world, in this country. And she's doing it by making a parallel of the past of Deep South Jim Crow era. I think she's actually mentioning offhandedly Brown versus Board of Education in this as well. This is a short story, and she's not on a soapbox in any way. I'm saying from my soapbox, but she's not. It's not preachy. It's more of just like, this character is talking to that character, and then just a series of that. But just so much is being said without being said at all. It's so good. She's such a good writer. And this is kind of what I want to do, because not only am I shorts in my novella here, not only am I novella, but I also have not the next book, but the book after the next, where I also explore the past. So spoiler alert. Where my characters also explore the past to some extent. And there's some past transgressions from the country onto, people of color. And I want to find a way to address that without it being just like, here is a fact, here's a fact, here's a fact, and here's my stance on that. I want it to be more like, this is their experience, this is how they responded to that experience, and meanwhile staying true to the narrative that we're trying to tell, the story that we're trying to tell. So just really inspiring, and makes me think I'll have to read Red Dirt Witch, not for the next book, but the book after as well, just to kind of probably do another edit of that. I was like, it might be before I start, but I think it'll likely be as I edit again, just to kind of look through that and figure out, am I giving you the story, or am I preaching to you? You know what I mean? I don't want to do that. So, get back.
I could talk all day about the brilliance that is Red Dirt Witch, but I've tried to take a few notes to summarize. I don't want to take forever on this video either. Okay, I think this is it. I hope not all of this, right? No, I don't think so. So, first of all, this short story, Red Dirt Witch, so our antagonist, our source of antagonism, oh my goodness, okay, that's a stretch. So there are Fae who come to Alabama in this story, and they choose to have white skin. I'm just going to read what it says. So just to read what it says about the Fae who came to Alabama and chose to have white skin. What does she say? I gotta find it. Okay. So, The white lady, and they do capital W, capital F for the phrase white folk, because it is our understanding that these are not human beings. These are people who have white skin, but are actually identified as fae later on in the tale. So she says to our main character, Emmeline, she says, "Can I trouble you for some tea or lemonade, though, Miss Emmeline? It's always mighty hot in this land. Not that that bothers your kind like it does mine." "Mighty hot indeed," Emmeline agreed evenly. She nodded to Pauline, who stood beside her trembling a little. That would be her daughter. Even a half-trained girl child knew power when she saw it. Pauline jumped but went inside. This land made its natural people brown for a reason, though, ma'am, long before either yourn or most of mine came along. Seems to me you can make yourself fit the land better if you want it, of course." The woman extended one long, thin arm and ran her fingers up the pearly skin, looking almost bemused to find such flesh upon herself. "I should, I suppose, but you know there's more reward than price that comes with this skin." So yeah, that would be why the Fae chose to be white instead of choosing to have brown skin, that they could survive in the land better. But I guess, like, if you're going survival, it's like, do we want to combat the sun, or do we want to combat the systemic racism? So basically the Fae came for easy prey, and in Alabama, easy prey are black people, because the only people that are going to fight for them is other black people, and they are also having to fight the systemic racism. Pauline, the daughter, is excited about a dream she had where she saw black people sitting in the front of a bus and a black man in a big white house who, you know, it might be obvious to you if you read it. I'm about to spoil this anyway. I'm about to spoil Red Dirt Witch for you. Just a little bit. It's still so much juicy tea in such a few pages that I think that you wouldn't hurt to read it anyway. But, so it turns out that the black man in the big white house is Barack Obama, a black man becoming president. And once the daughter spoke to her mother about the black man in the big white house, I realized there was no more dialogue in this segment until the next section break. And something about that, I think, did give it more power, because we still go on through the rest of the scene, you know, from a couple more paragraphs. The narrator gives what the mother's reaction was to the events prior to the daughter telling her what she saw in the dream, and to, like, in response to her daughter having that dream. Because as we know, our main character, Emmeline, has also had prophetic dreams of her own. And that's what we open the story with. So I'm not trying to spoil everything, but I want to, it's so good. It's just so good. So I initially, you know, being that this is my favorite because so much happened in such a short amount of time, and that's kind of how I speak about my novella, just saying that a lot happened in a short amount of time to the point where I didn't even realize how I was going to summarize it. And I've been able to do that in a better way, and I also was able to see where N.K. Jemisin sort of began to summarize this story as well. So I'm trying to stay on track, but I read this because there were language concerns that I had, things that I learned. Like when I was in high school, I was actually taking a collegiate level English course, and so the teacher was like, I know you're high school students, but I really want to push you guys to be collegiate level writers, since that's what we're here to do. And she wanted us to remove words like is, has, had, was, were, things like that. And I don't know what category of words that falls into, but I, you know, while I was writing, I ignored that rule, and then when I went to go edit, I would try to take some of those out. But I wanted to see if my favorite short story in this collection, I wanted to see if that story had those, because I couldn't even remember thinking back. And it was my thinking that perhaps it was in there, but the story is so good I did not notice. Because I noticed that when I read, say, Octavia Butler's books, oftentimes she'll use the phrase had, like this character had, like in past tense they had something, so they had it. And that's when it stands out to me and it gets really annoying, but it doesn't take away from Dr. Butler's books for me because the content being so rich. But I was like, maybe I just didn't notice. But it's possible that N.K. Jemisin took those words out. So reading it again, she did not take those words out. I just did not notice that they were in there. So it made me feel better about, sorry, this is kind of like slipping a little bit. But I didn't notice that she did actually use those words. They are in there. So I'm going to not worry about that in my writing so much. But what else? But also, like I was saying with City Born Great, there were times when the character could have been offensive, or where the narration could have been offensive, but it was in first person. So it almost seemed like it was that individual's thoughts and not the thoughts of the writer. Now, in Red Dirt Witch, we have a third person narrator. Or third person omniscient narrator, and I wanted to I didn't want to, I just happened to notice that the narrator in this tale also speaks about Caucasian people, and just speaking to the narrator's own struggles of being a black person in America. But in this case, now we're in the Deep South, in the Jim Crow era. So obviously it's a time, I think, where you can say things like white folk, or as a writer, it's almost, it might be ignored, because there's talk about slavery, and there's talk about segregation. And so for the narrator to then say white lady is not so offensive. But, in my story, which is more, what's the word? More current as far as the era that it's been written in, I was nervous to say things like, this is a white woman. I was like, this might be offensive. And it might be, but after reading Red Dirt Witch, I no longer have that worry, like, is this too offensive where I can't even say that in my story? I don't worry about that. And like I said, the person who edited my story herself is a white lady, so I was like, can I say that? And she tried to change the word white to alabaster, and I was like, nope, not right there, no. And I think I do use like porcelain or alabaster way later, talking about the same woman from a different character's perspective. But when that character first shows up, I say white lady, and I mean to, because in that moment, well, I can't tell you, so you'll have to read it. But I didn't intend to be offensive. It was just suggesting that in that particular moment, this character had no reason to fear this person except for that it was a white lady, and that made them scared. So yeah, I no longer worry about rather that it'll offend. I do now worry about, should I take that out of this video as a spoiler? I'm gonna pause this, fix my hair, and I'll be right back. So anyhow, yeah, so in this 20-page story, not only do we have, a magic system in place, but we're getting a but we also get a coming of age tale that if you blink you might miss it because the story is so short. But it's just like, okay, here's this moment that is rich for its own reasons, and then toward the end, call back to that moment that was rich for one reason, and now it's doubly rich because we have it wrapping up this coming of age tale for her daughter. So yeah, for me, it made it another one of those lovely mother-daughter wrap-up moments. I don't want to spoil any other stories, but hopefully you've read other I'm sure you've read similar books, but it was another one of those lovely mother-daughter tales that was on par, to me, it was on par with not only the Broken Earth trilogy, but on par with, say, Dr. Angelou's I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, and how that wrapped up, and also how some of the Parable series went for me as far as mother-daughter aspects went.
Upon editing this video, I decided to end this segment for Red Dirt Witch at this point. The rest of the footage would have been some mild spoilers from Dr. Butler's Parable series, which we have not covered in this video. But also, it kind of got a little off topic with some, it kind of segued into some more personal avenues of my childhood and the childhood of someone else's child who is not related to me, and I just didn't feel comfortable sharing. So if you don't mind bearing with me as we go ahead on to the final tale in this story, and here's an emotional segment that I had prior to that. So I'm just in here like, all right, this is the last of the 3 short stories that I'm gonna do, and then I'm gonna go do the final edit for my short story, for my novella. I keep saying short story. So this is the final story that I read, and then I'm gonna do the final edit of my novella, of my first ever novella, by the way. Like, I don't think I've ever written a story from beginning to end in my life. So now I'm gonna share it with everybody. I feel like I'm standing on top of a building all of a sudden. I shouldn't have said that. Oh, sorry. I did not expect that. I've never So yeah. I guess I didn't even grasp how real this was. I made so many plans, but this is it. Oh boy. This is huge. And I'm just like trying not to think about it the way I was thinking about it a minute ago, but I don't share my stories. My mother only read my first of any of my writings a couple of years ago, and that's not this world, so she doesn't know anything about this world. I sent her 2 paragraphs once. But now everybody's about to see this whole story, and I think it's going to be a little bit controversial, if I'm being honest. Like, I think a lot of people are going to love it, and I think a lot of people are going to hate it, but it's going to be the right people who love it, I think. Or I might offend some people, like in other avenues. I'm worried that I might offend some people that I really do like. So I don't know. I needed some sensitivity readers that I couldn't get in the time that I needed. Like, I didn't want to rush anybody, but I was like, I kind of need that stat. But if you can't, like, I totally get it. But once you tell people if you can't, like, it's not happening. So, but I have to let that go. And I don't have a problem, that they couldn't. My concern is that I still might put out something that's offensive to people who I don't intend to offend. So I'm just kind of like hoping for the best. Did as much research as I could. And the research that I did made me feel comfortable about what I have. And then there is one aspect that I'm worried about. And because there's a character trait for a person that could be offensive if I mean that group of people have that character trait. But that's not what I mean. I'm more have that person have that character trait because I'm aware of their zodiac sign. And I believe that their zodiac sign is going to... I'm saying too much. Yep. Spirit's like... Okay. So we'll see if I edit that out. But yeah. This is big. I'm stalling, I think, is what's happening here. So I'm gonna go read, I guess. The last thing that I read
to help me do the final edit. I'm not going to think about it. I'm not going to think about it. Pink elephant. Okay. All right. All right. I'm stalling. All right. Bye. Yeah. So in How Long to Black Future Month, La Alchemista did not disappoint at all, as usual. Like, I keep being like, maybe I'm overhyping it, and then no, and I read it and I really love it. Again, I realized this time though that they give you like the story and they take you on their like little adventure or whatever, and then you get the exposition at the very end. And it's not that I didn't notice before, obviously, like the takeaways that I got, I remember them being at the end, but it made me realize there was no real stopping to give any information up until that point. It was just kind of like she was taking you through like a day in the life of the chef, excuse me, and then a man comes in and he wants dinner. So I'm not going to spoil everything, but obviously the parts that I want to talk about are in the end. So my favorite like 3 paragraphs that sum up this whole thing, I'm not going to give you the last one, which is my very, very favorite, but I will give you the 2 above because I really like the way the concept of magic works in this story. So it says, if it's any consolation, Senora, I am a poor man now by the standards of my past. In my youth, my true youth, one could work wonders with eye of newt and a cauldron, but alas, the world has changed. I should hope so. Why ever would you waste your time with something as foul as newt's eyes? Because all things contain power, Senora, and some have more power than most. Science has only recently discovered that truth, but certain professions in the world, yours and mine, have known it for centuries. For who is to say plutonium is more powerful than, say, rice? One takes away 1,000,000 lives, the other saves 100 times as many. He smiles, pausing to take a long, appreciative sip of wine. And I'm going to stop there. But she says a cute line, and then he gives another really amazing paragraph that I would love to share. And I feel like it's not really a huge spoiler, but it kind of is because we don't know this information until the very end. Yeah, so I won't get into it anymore. Like it's not like a huge spoiler whatsoever in my opinion, but it's literally like on the last 3 pages out of 14 pages. So I'm gonna leave you to, get into the rest of that yourself. But I just like how it's talking about our real world, and it's true. Rice has saved more life than nuclear weapons have taken, I would think. So saved my life a few times. So yeah, main character, yeah. So in the beginning of the story, however, our main character is a chef, and she sits there and recreates, and she wonders something as simple as, should I reheat leftovers to give this man, or do I want to make it from scratch like I literally always do? So because it's true to her character, she does what's true to her character, and she doesn't reheat it. She makes it from scratch. But she was like, this man looks a step up from homeless, so but that decision could have shaped how the rest of the story unfolded. And I really like that, because it's kind of a way where the author knows how the story is going to unfold, but has the main character entertained for a second, having taken another route, so that, first of all, if you're remembering that by the end of the story will land better for you. It'll be more satisfying. But if you don't notice it until your next read through, I don't know if I noticed that or not, but I didn't remember it. So reading it back, it was more satisfying when I knew how the end would go. I was like, well, good thing she didn't reheat the leftovers. And it was just something that small, but I thought that was really cool. And like I said, I really enjoyed that we didn't get any of the information until the end. Our main character also didn't have any information. A lot of times what happens is all the characters have information, and just all the characters have information, and then the reader is left, or the viewer, if it's a show, we're all left to figure out what's actually occurring. But in this case, our main character also has no idea what's occurring, but she's been painted up to have a character who is obviously really enjoys a challenge, seeing as she's a black woman in a career dominated by white men. So, and it's specifically in cooking, which is very competitive to begin with, at least in my opinion, because all I do is watch cooking competition shows. Other than that, it's just me in my kitchen. Like, I don't know anything about culinary education. I hope my TV isn't, I normally cut it off when I record, so if it's bothering, please excuse. I'm almost done here. And yeah, my novella has nothing to do with cooking, but at one point I do have a moment of just talking about an apple pie recipe, and I really wanted to, like, I was so tempted to extend that whole recipe and really talk about it the way that we get to talk about food in this story, but it just doesn't make any sense or serve the plot for me to do that. So I just kind of put like a quick summation of why this character really liked this particular apple pie, and then I just kept it moving just to make it more authentic, but not slow down and stop, because I didn't want to put anything in the novella that wasn't important to the plot, seeing as it's such a short story. I didn't want to add any additional pages just to put a recipe out there. That would have been pointless, but I can still of course share that recipe if I want to later. And I really enjoyed just listening, like reading how the man enjoyed his food. I'm not going to give too many details, but this is a kind of a spoiler here if you want to pause. But the guy, I'll say that the food in this world is magically inclined, obviously. And so the way that he got to enjoy his food, I won't say how, but it had like elements of magic, and that was really cool, because like our last story was Red Dirt Witch, which is really, it's kind of rough, like, to be so short. It wasn't no type of like trauma, you know, just trying to show trauma for trauma's sake, nothing like that. It was just speaking honest to real triumphs and trials of our people, but mostly triumphs, since it showed us the negative past and how things have improved since, and even though they still have a long way to go. And that story, Red Dirt Witch, did kind of end on that note of saying we've come so far, but we're not done yet, you know what I mean? But then La Alchemista comes, and it's this much more lighthearted, positive energy, and there's still, like, it's just nice to see, you know, like, she continued on with, like, okay, just kind of like almost one story was about a people struggling, and then that next story comes and it's about one individual person that identifies with that same group, and now they're thriving in their individual life. And that, I just thought that was really cool, that story, La Alchemista, comes after Red Dirt Witch, and yet they're both so great and memorable. Like, I know there are other great stories in this collection, but I cannot remember them after reading these two stories. Like the story City Born Great was, like I said, it was not one of my favorites, but it stood out for me. The first four, you know what I mean? But I think the first two just stand out because they were the first two. I really did enjoy the first one, I know, the first time I read it around. And I liked it even more the second time I read it. And I wasn't necessarily in the right headspace to receive these stories as well, but they still stood out to me, and I realized that I kind of draw a blank after La Alchemista. And I remember Stone Hunger, the title and the story specifically, but I think it's because that was a part of 5th season, and I just freshly read 5th season when I went to read this, but I don't really remember anything else. I think I remembered, once I looked at all the titles again, I felt like there was one that kind of had Like, I think she literally used the phrase The Walking Dead in one of these stories, but I could be wrong. I don't remember, and I couldn't tell you which story, but as I read the titles over to see if anything jogged my memory, that's what I kind of vaguely began to remember. Oh, I think this happens somewhere in this short series, short stories, in the short stories. But yeah, so nothing has been with me, though, in the way that La Alchemista and Red Dirt Witch have been with me. I will even say City Born Great was with me, because it just kept saying, you didn't read me right. You know, it kept saying, you didn't get everything that I had to offer. That's what that short story said to me. And The Ones Who Stay and Fight was just another one of those where I was like, feeling like the setting itself was so simply done. I couldn't remember the words that she used to give me that setting, but I remembered seeing the people in the street celebrating and just being like, why do I remember the scenery of this story so well, and I don't even remember the story? So when I was going to make my setting or write my novella, I looked to that before I started over again to make sure that I can find ways to give our setting subtly in a way that you're there, it sticks with you, but you don't feel like you're sitting there reading a moment of understanding the background and the setting. So, I mean, just super inspiring collection. And that's just the first 4 that I'm talking about, only 3 of which I talked about in length in this video. But I also didn't want to make this video really long. I'd absolutely recommend How Long to Black Future Month. I really got to put my cover back on. That cover is so beautiful. And now, as nervous as I am, it is time to go get ready to begin my very final edit on my novella before I go share it with the world. And I'd like to have that happening this week, after this weekend. Excuse me, yeah. That's what we're gonna do. I'm scared, obviously, but you know, it's a good scare, I guess, because it's one of those things that it's always going to happen, and if it never happens, that means I didn't finish my goal, so I might as well just do it. And I just watched that episode of, the newer episode of RuPaul's Drag Race, Season 7, All Stars, All Winners, and Evie Oddly legit was like, one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself is the gift of failure. And I was like, excuse me? But you do learn more from your failures than your successes. Not to say that I'm going to fail. I don't think that by any means. I think this book is going to be lit. I think you're going to love me. I think you're going to wish you watched these videos a lot sooner. But, however, it did make me feel that even if it were to hypothetically fail, that would still give me back so much, because I'm never going to stop. I'm my own publication company, so I never have to fear my publication company dropping me. As long as I have a heartbeat and working hands and a brain, you know what I mean? I can get another book out, and I can only get better if I fail. I can still get better if I have success, and I certainly intend to. So I'm going to go look and read my story for the first time in 2 months. And hopefully I don't have imposter syndrome. I'm thinking since I haven't seen it in 2 months, I'll like it way better now. And then I actually have to do that bonus chapter because I have the content down. I have it in the right order. But there are no formatted paragraphs in any capacity for that chapter. So I'm going to go look at the entire story and then edit the bonus chapter and hope to the sweet heavens that I don't need anybody else to proofread it, because there's nobody going to proofread it. It's just going to be out. It's going to be an advanced reader copy, and hopefully the readers respond well. Otherwise, I'm going to have to make sure it doesn't get printed that many times before I get too much bad reviews. Too many bad reviews. So yeah. Wish me luck. I'm hoping for the best. I'm claiming it. I'm so excited. I already know this book is lit. I think that the worst thing that could happen as far as critiques, like I said, I'm afraid that I might offend a lot of people. But I also know that it's going to be banned somewhere, some kind of way. There's going to be a religious banning on my on my novella. But if the people actually read it, they're going to live. They're going to live, honey. They're going to live. Only 4 people have read it. They're getting their lives. I'm getting my life. I know I'm about to go get my life. I haven't read it in 2 months. And the fact that I expect it to be good means that it's probably going to be even better than I think. But lie to you not, I legit, when I get to this one segment toward the climax, I cry every time. So I have no, like, I'm the one that's supposed to be my worst critic. I'm supposed to have imposter syndrome, and I kind of do. But not that, like, I'm just like, I keep looking at my book cover and the back of the book cover, and I'm like, it looks so professional, I'm a fraud. That's where I get the imposter syndrome. But I really think I have a great story. And there was many times where I was scared, I was nervous, I didn't think it was going to be great. But that is currently behind me. And now, because I said that, I'm like, oh my gosh, what if I go read it and I hate it now? But I think I'm going to love it. I mean, like I said, every time I get to that climactic scene, it brings a tear to my eye. And if it can move me like that, as my harshest critic, I'm going to move a whole lot of people. Hopefully I create a movement, you know what I mean? And it's not societal drama big. I don't want to say too much. But that climax, the area that it makes me cry, it's that personal drama big. But it's not like just sad. I'm not even going to tell you. I'm just not going to tell you. It's great. It's great. You should read it. Buy it. Because it's going to be on sale very soon. Like, I'm done recording this portion of this video. If I add any more, it's going to be in the realm of editing my video, and if I have anything to say during that process and the bonus chapter. I was thinking about talking a bit about the business aspect of things I'm going to do, but I think if I do that, I'm going to wait until after I publish and after I post this video. So if I do talk about it, it would be on a different video from this, I'm certain. So yeah, hopefully, so I intend actually, before I edit and post this video, I intend to put the inside details and the outside details of my book onto Amazon or Ingram Spark or both, and then they tell me when my actual book will be ready and available for the printer and approved for me to just click buy, add to cart, buy. I'm so nervous. I'm so nervous. But I'm also excited. This is a huge blessing. I think it's going to be a huge come up for me and the family and the tribe, and that includes you, because I intend for these blessings to keep going around and around and around in bigger and bigger circles. I'm going to be extending my table as often as possible, so to speak. I want to go over my checklist and everything with you guys, but I think by the time this video is out, if the book is not available, it should be very nearly available. I should have a date to when it's available by the time this is up, unless I do it really quickly and earlier, but I just don't think so, because there's nothing else that I want to do except finish and get it up, you know what I mean? So I'm going to do that. Reading this actually makes me feel more confident about my edit somehow. And yeah, so the next time you see me, I'll probably be a published author, for real. Like, it's happening. When you see this, it's either going to be available or I'll have a date of when it's available. And I might share that date regardless, but if I don't share that date, it is because I have not yet tested it and received a physical copy that I approve of. But that does mean that I should be able to get into this competition, because technically my book will be on sale to the public, which is the rule that I was like, okay, this is the one rule I have to make sure I get done and followed, and then I can get into the North Street Book Prize competition. I'm winning. I'm winning. I'm winning. I'm telling you, I'm going to go read this book. I'm going to go read my story and see if I feel that confident. I'll let you know. Maybe that'll be the next part of this video. Yeah, I'll let you know if I still like it in a couple minutes. So